Hello and welcome to the Guitar Hang Podcast. I'm your host, John Stankorb. Today we've got an absolute legend on the show, Richie Kotzen. With a prolific and diverse solo career, Richie has built a reputation as one of the most soulful, dynamic, and technically brilliant guitarists in the game. In this episode, we dive into Making a Black Light White Noise, his latest album with Adrian Smith, which was going to be released on March 7th, 2025. We talk about his creative process and what keeps him constantly evolving as an artist, and his inspiration behind his music, and how he approaches songwriting and guitar playing. You don't want to miss this one, so please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and drop a comment below. Let us know your favorite Richie Kotzen track. Let's get into it. This is the Guitar Hang Podcast with Richie Kotzen.
I'm all right. How you doing?
Good. Happy anniversary. Very exciting.
Thank you.
8 years. That's fabulous.
Yeah. I mean, how long? We've been together longer than 8, 9, 10. We've been 12 years since we've been together. It's pretty cool. Nice times.
Yeah. And to be able to have the music that you share. I mean, it's a rare treat when you have a spouse that you can be creative with, make music with, perform with, record, all that kind of stuff. It's really exciting.
Absolutely. Good times.
So I love the new album. It's fantastic. And I have to say the outro to Beyond the Pale has created such an earworm for me. I would say that would be an amazing tune to close a set out with. That's just fabulous. I love the whole album, but that one in particular just grabbed me.
You know, it's funny that song. It's like it almost was like the forgotten song because we had finished everything, and the album. You know, we were like thinking we had to write more, do this or do that. And then Adrian called one day, said, "Hey, I just listened to this song." He said, "You know, I think this should be on the record." And somehow, to me, I thought that it was something that we, weren't going to finish. And so I'm glad we did because, you're not the only person that pointed it out. I guess it was necessary that was finished.
Yeah, it's every once in a while you hear little strains of things, but it reminded me of Jeff backing away, but then it had a little bit of a Floyd thing. And the outro I just thought was incredible because you had your vocal line that's being accompanied with the harmony guitars, and that's the thing that created this earworm for me. I listened to it this morning and I listened to it this afternoon, and it's like that outro was just really powerful.
Yeah, I remember adding that on that wasn't there obviously originally. It's the song, the basis of it, and I have the basis of it what came from Adrian, which was the beginning,
right?
That verse, and in typical Smith Kotzen fashion, I ended up writing the chorus.
Yeah.
That beyond the pale of my way, right? And so it was this kind of back and forth, and the ending, I wanted to do something that had this kind of almost like I almost want to say a cinematic, maybe that's not the right word, but like,
yeah.
I was picturing some kind of opening up somehow of light, kind of like that I thought was a cool departure, like you're entering into a new realm, so to speak, where the outro really has very little to do with anything that you've heard previously, which is nothing new. I mean, plenty of songs have done that, but I didn't think that we had a song that did that, and so kind of built that as a solo section, and I think I take the first solo, which is on the Strat, with the middle position, and that's why it has that sound. By the way, I love the Stratocaster in the middle pickup. You hear me do that a lot, and I really love that lead tone. And so that's that, and I'm using the bar on the Strat, which is a vintage style tremolo, with the little screws. So I got lucky; it stayed in tune, and then I believe it goes into Adrian's solo,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then it comes back to me, doesn't it? With
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
there a vocal thing?
Uh-huh.
And so it was, orchestrated as such. Um, and then doesn't it come back to the melody again with the lyric?
Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I found, and I think that's where it's heading, and as it's going into the outro, and that was the thing that caught me was the
like the tie back,
yeah,
like the bookend,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, exactly, yeah, and it
Yeah.
just seemed very cinematic, and I just thought, man, this to me, for my way of thinking, that would be an amazing way to close a setup because you guys could really build on that, and it just
You know what? Sitting here, I probably shouldn't say this, but sitting here, I think the sentiment there's a movie, the movie Goodfellas,
yes,
and
yeah,
in the movie, it's like one of the best uses of music, of popular music in a film is when all the shit's going down. I think it's Layla. They
Layla,
play
yeah,
Layla.
I
It
can't hear
comes
I can't hear Layla without thinking of that, yeah,
that comes up. It's either a Lincoln or a Cadillac or whatever the car is, right?
yeah,
And in that sense, like, oh shit, it's just here we are. This is where it's at. Like that feeling that you get when that's happening. Like I think that might have been in my mind when I
yeah,
orchestrated that departure, sort of. Because the song is like, the lyric is we both went, beyond the pale. It's like when you're in a relationship and just things get so fucking out of control that it's like, all right, there's no coming back to where it started,
right.
you know. And so that's why it felt like the song needed that turn. And when it does that, um, I think it's effective as a composition. I think I guess that's probably where I must have got that from, is like from
Yeah.
from Layla.
Yeah, it would, and the tone is there's moments it's very evocative of like a mini moog or something. I'm not sure how you process. I mean, it's a combination of your fingers and the tactile way that you're phrasing, but the tone of it was just
The guitar,
yeah, the guitar tone. It was
it's
so
just
legato and mini moogish. I was like, damn, that is just
it's
I
how
love
it's literally, because someone else asked me, it's literally how I'm playing it. So it's like you hear the guitar in your mind sounding like that, and you make it do that. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so it's like the feeling, it's like an all encompassing. And so the guitar is plugged into that orange Marshall head that I have,
yeah,
and the overdrive is probably the Sansamp section of my fly rig,
yeah,
because you can drive it just enough, because it's not like it's not the kind of tone where you hit a note and it rings forever, that kind of
no,
compressed sustain where you just hold it and it does all the work for you.
right,
It's a very exposed guitar sound. So for a lot of guitar players, they would probably avoid that sound like the plague, because it's not forgiving. If you play something, it's going to reproduce exactly what your fingers are doing.
yeah,
Whereas sometimes you can have a tone where it has a lot of gain
yeah,
and you've got the right amount of delay, and you can kind of play into that a little bit. And so if something, it's a different feel, it's a different reaction. Where this is like really like the TV show Naked and Afraid,
yeah,
you're fully exposed. Um, and so, but that's why it sounds the way it sounds to your ear. It's like you described it. It's because you're actually hearing every little nuance,
right,
how this is picked, how it's bent. A lot of sometimes the wang bar is bending it, but sometimes it's the finger getting behind the fret, bending
yeah,
into the note before you hit it. So, all that stuff.
yeah.
And it's just, why it sounds that way.
Yeah, I was learning a little bit and writing some of the solo out, and I thought this is something that you can definitely tell that somebody that has a killer left hand because it has a tone that you really have to manhandle, and you're not like you say you're not relying on this a lot of gain and compression. You're really making it happen by manipulating the it's all left hand kind of thing where it's really a meaty
Yeah.
digging into get the tone
Yeah,
to
and
coax it
I
out.
think the string gauge has a little to do with it, at least for me. Like, I have 11 through 49. That's always been my gauge.
Yeah,
And when I pick up a guitar with, well, obviously with a heavier gauge, it would totally throw me off. But even if I get a guitar with a lighter gauge, it's very frustrating for me because
yeah,
I don't have the same kind of resistance. And I think it's that kind, it, it's the struggle, I think is the
yeah,
word.
yeah,
There's a
yeah,
slight element of like the struggle that you're hearing, which is great because it's part of the pain,
yeah, yeah,
it's it's a painful moment in the song because you're realizing that all is lost and it's you're not coming back to where you once were, and it's an acceptance. And so for me as the soloist in that moment, I'm processing not only what I'm playing against the music but what just happened in the song,
yeah.
or at least what I was thinking when I wrote whatever part of the lyrics that I wrote. Because obviously Adrian and I wrote it together, but my interpretation of all that is now coming out in that moment. That's what I went for. So enough. There's
Well,
other songs on the record.
it seems like a very joyful when you listen to the recording and you hear both of you singing and playing and just the whole thing. It was just a very uplifting thing. You get a lot of moods. It's not a one trick pony record. It goes a lot of different places. I'd be interested, and I'm sure listeners would be interested, as what you both bring to the table in terms of the co-writing thing, how that works, what things that you lean on for Adrian and vice versa. And
Oh, yeah, I can touch on that. I mean, there is a bit of a method to our madness. Um, as far as how we record, we kind of adopted a little bit of the approach that I take with my solo albums. Because the truth is that we kind of are writing as we go. And so the part that we adopted is this whole notion of everything is mic'd up and ready to go all the time. So the drums are downstairs in the drum room, mic'd up. There's a bass path for the signal to go, the guitar setup. And so what happens is as we're throwing it down, recording the ideas, we can, over the course of any, a week, 2, 3 days, whatever, go back and change stuff until we get it how we like it. Even to the point that we can change the drum fill. It's like, all right, well, yeah, I want to rewrite this bridge and it doesn't really work. So, but the drum fill, if we change the drum fill somehow, so I can go punch it in,
right,
and bam, there it is. So, uh, and then as far as the actual where the stuff is coming from, the material, it comes from both of us. So on one hand, Adrian will show up here in this room with his laptop and start going through, all right, I got this idea, I got this, and he'll play me 5 or 6 ideas. And so for argument's sake, let's maybe say 4 of them I connect with. So, oh
yeah,
yeah, we can do something with that. Put them in my computer, because my computer has the
right,
software, right? And then and it's connected to the outboard gear. So then I'll say, okay, well, I've got this, and I'll play him, 6 or 7, and he'll say, all right, well, I like those 3. So we got 7 things that are worth messing with. So, and this is where the process takes a lot of time,
mhm,
because we'll work on something, and we build what we call a template. And so the template can be built on sometimes a simple drum beat that we, play and program, or the template can be, me downstairs playing a form. And we've done both. And so what we'll do is build the track on that, right? And then from there we can, decorate it however we wish. The real fun is the lyrics and coming up with like what do we want it to sing and talk about, which, depending on what day of the week it is sometimes obvious and then sometimes not so obvious. But something that happens is very interesting for us is that, and it happened on several songs. I mean, I know in the first record it happened on Solar Fire, and on this record it happened on Heavy Weather,
Mhm.
um, uh, I would be singing something on my demo,
Yeah.
and I would not be singing real words. It would be like I think the word's phonetic or
Yeah. Yeah.
something like that. Is that the
Yeah.
word?
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And and so it's like fake words, you know. And I would do that, like whatever the hell it is that I'm doing, right? And I play it for him, and he said, "Well, I like that chorus." And he said, "It sounds like you're saying heavy weather." I'm like, "Really?" I said, "Like, what do you mean? Like a bad storm?" He said, "Yeah, exactly. Like a thunderstorm, heavy, like a snowstorm, heavy weather." I'm like, wow. So how would you write a song with the title Heavy Weather? Well, it's something you have to face. You've never faced the heavy weather. Uh, and it's like, yeah, yeah, I like that. Let's write something off that. And so now it turns into this conversation and we're just talking. It's like, well, imagine like if you had, you know, a child
Mhm.
and they grew up in a situation where everything was pretty much there for you.
Yeah.
Everything is lined up for you to either take the ball and run with it or run it into the ground. And maybe they run it into the ground and then they kind of have an attitude or they want to blame. It's like, well, wait a minute, you've never faced the heavy weather the way I have,
Yeah.
meaning being, left alone to your own devices, go figure it out for yourself. And so now we've got something to write about. And so that's how this stuff happens.
Yeah.
Um, all of them, really. It's like, you come up with a situation that either you went through or you fabricate.
Mhm.
That's the other thing. A lot of people have this misconception, like everything that an artist writes about has to have happened to them.
Yeah.
It's
Literally.
not necessarily. It could have happened to somebody they know. It could be a fantasy or something imagined. I mean, let's not close all the doors of creativity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the where you guys overlap is fast. Anytime artists get together that have something to say and that brings out the best in each or the group or whatever it is, it's very fascinating because where you and Adrian might intersect, that's some place that only the two of you, and maybe you haven't had that intersection with another musician, that particular thing where there's so many influences, but it's like two circles where they cross over. That space
Sure.
inside is really exciting because it's like shit, I don't think I may have realized that I have that thing in me that this other person is helping me bring out and vice versa.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of a collaboration. I mean, that's the whole point in doing a collaboration. You
Yeah.
know, if Adrian wanted to make a solo record, he's fully capable of going off and doing that. I mean, I've been doing that since, I was 18, literally. That's what I do is I make records for myself. But the idea of working with another person is that something is going to happen out of the ordinary, or that maybe wouldn't have happened, because things happen out of the ordinary when you work alone as well. But the idea is that, you know, something that would not have been becomes. And so in an instance where the song Solar Fire on the first record, I wrote that chorus, I was singing that melody over those chord changes, but I didn't have words. And the Solar Fire would have never even crossed my mind. Like,
Right.
what the hell is that? And then he thought that I was singing that. And then it was like, oh, well, let's write about it,
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. It's exciting. It's a cool place to come from, when you're making music.
Yeah, it's titles like that that you, like you say, you would not have been able to get to there is some things that are just pure magic, and that's the thing about writing songs is things arrive at your doorstep, and it's like, okay, that's awesome, that's fantastic. I would never.
Yeah.
This morning, I had no idea I was going to wake up and write a song called Solar Fire. I hadn't even thought of Solar Fire, but I was
Yeah.
singing. I think it's melismatically where you're just singing like you described, where it's
There
vowels.
you go. That's the word.
Yeah,
I
but
like the word.
yeah, it's a beautiful thing to for that thing to arrive. And there when you keep the magic in what you do, that's where the real joy is, because you're not just phoning, and I, not that anybody's phoning in, but it's like it's these happy little accidents or surprises that keep you excited after, like you say, you've been writing and recording since you're 18. That's got to be the fuel for you to keep what's next, what's out there that I haven't uh, fully anticipated arriving on my doorstep.
Yeah.
So the one tune I wanted to ask you about is the Blindsided. That I love the intro. Is kind of reminiscent of Little Guitars by Van Halen and Won't Get Fooled Again. I
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
kind of
yeah. Definitely has that vibe for sure. Yeah, that's a fun track. That's one of the earlier ones that came together. Um, and again, classic case. Adrian brings in a riff, and I show up with a chorus to it. It seems to be a common thing. Not always, not all of the songs, but that one
yeah.
for sure. And I'm I'm quiet because I'm replaying it in my head.
Right.
What a lot of people don't realize is like just because, how do I say, like, when you write music, it's like for me, I write it, record it, and then I don't think about it anymore. It's not like I go back and listen to it again, unless I find myself in the position where I got a tour,
Right.
and that's okay. What songs am I going to play? And that's when I have to go back and learn them and figure out what I got. What am I dealing with?
Yeah, and I would think that that's got to be a bit of a challenge because there's such a body of work. I mean, you've got several tours just inside your 50 uh, release, the triple album 50 track. I
Mm.
mean, just that alone, that's quite a tome. I think most people would call that an amazing career to have 50 tunes that they created. That's a very exciting project.
Yeah, that that came together out of a really weird place. I was on the road, and it was really bothering me that I had all this material that was in various forms of incomplete.
Yeah.
It was really bothering me. And then somebody, I don't know, somebody put a record out that had like 30 songs on it or something like that.
Mhm.
And I um I was just thinking on the bus, it's like, I really got to finish this stuff. And then it dawned on me that, when I counted how many compositions I had, or maybe I got this backwards. I think I realized I had about 30 songs.
Okay.
Yes, I wanted to complete this material. And so I thought, well, if I can get to 50 by the time February 3rd rolls around, I could release them all at once. And that was my thought. And I thought, uh, even if it was just a digital only release, just put them out, get them done up, and just to have that finished. And so I got to October, November, and I was like, wow, I got like 36, 37 songs done, finished. And then I started finding some that were finished that were never released. And then I started writing some new things. And it turned out that by November, and I was going to Brazil for some touring, I had it done before I left. And the idea came to me like in June
Yeah.
of 2019 while I was on tour. And yeah, it was like, there it is. I've got 50 songs. So it was like, if I got 50 songs done by the time I turned 50, then I'd put it out on my 50th birthday. If
Yeah.
I didn't have them done, then it wouldn't happen. And who cares if it happens or not? You know what I mean? It was just something that for myself, I'm like, well, I want to finish this material. I don't like that it's lying around. And, if I get it finished in time, I'll release it. So that's how it came to be. Because some people ask me like, "Oh my God, how did you do that?" And this and that. And it's like, well, it wasn't really that much pressure. It just kind of happened,
Right.
you know. It happened pretty easily. I came home, I came in here, and I'd open a song one day and I'd listen to it, and I was of the right mind to where lyrics were really coming. And that's the thing, is the lyrics. And I think some of the coolest stuff I've ever written is on that album,
Yeah.
lyrically. I really think it's probably the best, it's probably my best work if I think about it. If I put everything that I've done, and so like I said, that's probably it, because I was in a very interesting zone with the writing. And I was getting up at like 2 in the morning, coming down here and staying up, working. And it was just this wild, you know, thing, a lot of red wine was consumed. I don't drink anymore, but
Yeah.
then it was, and so I don't know. It was just this kind of like, I was just in this zone of whatever, of making music. It was fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get the vibe that you have a studio set up that you're so familiar with that everything is ready to go. It's kind of like the USS Enterprise. Everything is ready for you, plugged up, ready to go. Ideas can come quickly. You're not really faffing about, worrying about trying to capture an idea because you're set up and ready to go.
Yeah, that is true, but unfortunately, it has been disrupted. It has been disrupted and dismantled to some degree, not 100%, but um, I did dismantle some things because we had a big scare here with the fire situation. So I have to reassemble some elements
Yeah.
of that. But yes, you are right. Under normal conditions, once I get into that recording mode, things are, uh, you know, are very easy. It's an ease of operation,
Yeah.
put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I think from what I've read about your story, because I've followed your career for quite a while, and you strike me as somebody that while you picked up music very early, simultaneously you were learning multiple instruments and you were recording constantly. So you were learning all the different technologies, but just being very at home with the recording process, EQ, being able to be a self contained writer, producer, engineer, guitar player, vocalist. It's something that's very rare for a lot of guitar players, but I think mainly it's because you just jumped into it at an early age. So it wasn't that wild and crazy of a thing. It was just something that you've been doing for
Yeah.
40
Well,
some odd years.
I mean, it's a real clear path to me, and I'll tell you what it is. I realized very quickly, if I wanted to get where I wanted to get to, I would have to do the work myself.
Yeah.
And, I grew up looking at people like Prince or David Bowie or other artists, and I wanted to go in that direction. I did not grow up, because I did not grow up looking at you know a single musician saying, I want to be a guitar player in a band. Or I didn't look at a single musician say, I want to be a lead singer in a band. I didn't have those kind of thoughts. I thought I wanted to be a solo act, a solo artist. It was very clear to me. Um, After I made my very first record, which was instrumental, I realized, okay, this is not for me. I gotta sing. And that's kind of where it came together, where I realized, where I had this realization that I had to do this all on my own. Because up until then, I was in a band, and the band that I was in, actually, we made original music. We wrote original music, and we made a record, an EP, and we recorded it. And there were 2 or 3 songs that I wrote. There were a couple songs that the bass player wrote. I didn't sing any of it because the other 2 guys in the band sung circles around me. And so it's like, you guys are the lead singers. I was only 15 or 16 when we did this. maybe I was 17. I think I was 17 when we did that record. Nonetheless, the record company in New York wanted to hear more music. I think it was Epic. And we couldn't get them new music. And it was almost like, from what I remember, this is how my memory, I remember that the boys were more, and they were grown men. I was the boy, but the guys were more interested in just staying on that circuit because the band was making money,
Right.
playing 4 or 5 nights a week, covers, throwing in a couple originals. And me, I didn't like that. I wanted to be an original act. It was cool in the beginning. We started that when I was about 15, and I was like this kind of hotshot kid guitar player. And it was cool in the beginning, but as it expanded, I realized, okay, well, if I keep doing this, I'm going to stay here.
Sure.
We got to make our own music, and that was deep in my head. And so we could, for whatever the reason, we couldn't get new music to the label in New York. And simultaneously, I had interest from the record label in San Francisco, which was Shrapnel Records.
Okay.
And so I started really pursuing that. I got in their spotlight column in Guitar Player magazine. And then they were going to team me up with another guitar player in New Jersey who was really a great player. And we were sending stuff. I was sending stuff. And all of a sudden, that evolved into an offer for me for a solo contract. So I took it. And that was my out. But I remember when I was in San Francisco at 18 years old making my first record, I was asking all kinds of questions because in my head at that point, I had already moved on. Like, okay, I'm going to make this record, and the next record, I'm going to do my vocal songs. And I still thought that maybe a part of me thought that I would have to have a singer because I didn't have a lot of confidence. But I knew that I had to do this myself. And I was asking a lot of questions like, well, why are you doing this? Well, why are you doing that? Why are you doing this, that with the compressor, the EQ, everything else? So by the time that record was done, I started sending these vocal songs to the label. And I was having some guys sing on it for me. And then the label was like, no, 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 you have to sing yourself. And so this is when I realized, oh yeah, okay, I have to be the whole thing. That's when I had the realizations that I have to be the entire thing. And that's when it came to be like, it was like, that's when I was like, looked at like Prince as like, when I learned that he was the guy making the record, like in the studio, it was him. I was like, okay, well, this is possible. It's totally possible to do, to be the guy where it's like all self-contained. Um, and so that's where and I was probably about 19 or 20 years old at that point, where I realized, okay, you're gonna have to just do it yourself. Just do it yourself. And then that way you don't have to worry about someone else who's available, not available, this or that, and that's where that kind of mentality came of like, you know, fuck it, we'll do it live. I'm gonna do it myself. And that's what worked for me.
Yeah.
you know um and that's why I haven't done anything in my life other than what I'm doing.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, it's great to have that focus because there's not a ton of artists like that, but you have Prince and Todd Rundgren and a few others that are fully capable of handling all those different things. And once you have that autonomy to be able to write your own script, it's a very liberating and empowering thing to know. Okay, and I'm sure you probably picked up some great information about publishing and all that, retaining the rights to your tunes, all the things that are going to help you uh, acquire great dividends down the road. You know.
yeah, I mean, that's a whole other thing. That's a business conversation. But I was just sitting here while you're talking. I was thinking about, someone said to me at dinner recently, uh would you ever consider working with a producer? And it's like, well, I have done that. But I said, but for what? Why?
Yeah.
And then, because it's like, and maybe I would, but it doesn't cross my mind, because it's like to work with a producer to get a different result. Is that why? But if I'm happy with the result and this satisfies my whatever is in me,
Yeah.
then for what? You know, because the music that I'm the music that I'm making initially, I'm doing it for myself.
Sure.
I'm trying to exercise whatever is happening internally. When I do that and I hit play and the speakers reproduce exactly what I was feeling, hearing in my head, that there's no better feeling. Like that feeling is way better than live performance for me. And I think a lot of guys, because they don't do that, they don't, they get on stage, they play a show, they play live, they get all the accolades and people screaming, give me your autograph, and that's their high. But for me, that's cool. And I respect that. And thank you for presenting a taste of that. But where I really feel like that euphoric high is when I've got something in my head floating for 3 weeks, a melody, and suddenly a lyric comes that connects with it. And then I'm like, all right, let me work on this. Let me write a story around this. Okay, let me come in the studio, turn my shit on, and try to see if I can turn this into music that other people can hear it exactly how I'm hearing it.
Yeah.
That is my pure joy. So to answer the question, do you ever think of working with, well, to achieve what?
Yeah.
For what reason? What I was
I was
for
going
what?
to, I
What
say they were going to ask you at dinner, would you ever consider producing somebody else, another artist? That
and
would,
that's like another no. I mean, because maybe I've done that. I remember years ago, I had a recording studio. I had bought this commercial building. I had a good year, and I ran a little studio. And at Interscope was sending me bands to produce because I still had a connection there because they had signed me one. That's how I ended up in Los Angeles. And so one of the guys was there and remembered me. And so they sent me some bands to produce. And it was fun up until it got to the point where it was like, oh, I'm actually in this weird game where I got to kind of convince these other people that I don't really know that no, trust me, this is the right way to go. And that became exhausting for me. Or like you do something and it's like, oh, yeah, they don't really like, they're not really, it's that resistance that pushes like fuck that. Like I don't enjoy that. I
yeah,
really don't. It's like I I mean, it's different like with the winery dogs because we kind of have this push and pull thing that kind of worked, when we were working together, and Adrian and I haven't. But in the production thing, doing a little bit of it, it was like, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't have the same joy.
yeah,
I could probably find it if I found the right artist to produce,
yeah,
you know, but I don't seek it out. Put it that way. Like I'm not, oh, maybe I could do this, maybe I could do that. I really just love doing what I'm doing. I'm very comfortable with whatever the hell it is I'm doing. I really like doing that. I mean, my interest is just preserving what I've established and let it grow organically, nicely, whether it's quietly or every now and then there's a little peak in the valley. That's all fine, you know. But I don't know. I don't know
yeah.
how else to say. I feel like I'm rambling.
Why mess with perfection? I mean, and the other thing is,
Well, it's
now,
not perfect, by the way.
well,
Nothing's
I mean,
perfect
not
in my work.
perfection, but
I'm full of flaws.
maybe not the right choice. Yeah, but why add more chance for something to go awry? And right now, you're working with Julia, and you've got this.
Not to interrupt you, I have to say this. If the opportunity came across to work with a producer that I um that I connected with, I would do it. And I'll tell you this, I not saw, but I listened to the new Marilyn Manson record, and I see that Tyler Bates was involved in the production.
Okay.
I think that record is a fucking masterpiece from what I heard. So maybe that would be someone that I could work with. That would be interesting because someone like that is going to take me here, there, or another place. So, you know, I probably just negated everything that I just said over the last 10 minutes.
That's
It's like it's a very complex thing that goes on with creativity, because on one hand it's like, why bother? But then on the other hand, if there's no pressure with expectations and this and that, then yeah, I guess I'm open to pretty much everything.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think some of the greatest actors are willing to kind of put them if the right script comes across their desk, is okay. This is going to take me into a place that maybe I had. I'll give it a try, and I'm working
Yeah,
with somebody
yeah,
that has
yeah.
a track record. You know, I mean, I guess guys like Daniel Day-Lewis and some of these other Philip Seymour Hoffman would sometimes take roles that maybe they hadn't perhaps thought of, but it led them into a territory that just opened up another avenue. But it has to be a
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's hard to for me to connect the acting to songwriting. I think they're two different beasts. But creativity is creativity, so I'm sure there's some connection there. But yeah, probably that's about all I can say on it.
so the also another tune that struck me was Wrath. That there's a
Wraith.
Wraith. I'm not Wraith. Yeah, there's an I in there. You're right. There's something happening that's just amazing on the solo, and it has a key change. It was just incredible. Uh, I was just kind of curious when you're tracking. Are you're not doing any comps? I would suspect. You're playing a raw pass at something, going back and listening to it, but it just seemed like that was a perfect moment in that song where the key change happens, and the phrasing around that was just really very cool.
Yeah, and so I don't know what led us there. Has a riff. Yeah, it just seemed like it needed to take a left turn, like to get
Yeah,
away for a minute. And then, anytime like, you're soloing over a half step up and down chord change like that, the notes, at least to my ear, that I played in the solo seemed appropriate. You know, I don't want to get all modal on anyone, but you trans you can tell me what I played.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the ultimate thing is how did it make you feel, and it's funny because there's times, especially when I don't know if you're like this when you're driving and you're listening to something that you really get into, you may rewind that like 3 or 4 times, but man, I got to hear that again. That is so damn cool. There's just these little moments.
Yeah, yeah, that happened. I got in a car accident over that.
Oh shit.
I'll never forget it. This is like it had to have been 1990 or 91. And I had just moved to LA. Interscope had signed me and moved me to LA, and they were renting me a car. I had gotten my own place with my advance money, and then they were through their accounts renting me a car. And eventually they stopped renting me the car because this sort of thing started to happen, what I'm about to tell you, more than once. And I'm driving down La Cienega with Atma Anur sitting next to me, who was playing drums with me. Yeah. And we were listening to Terence Trent D'Arby's second album. And he sang something. He did something that was so badass. And both of us like pointed at the stereo in disbelief. And I was going down La Cienega in the left lane, and I went to rewind it. And as I went to reach for the radio for the cassette player with my right hand, my left hand turned the car into the
Shit.
right lane, and
Oh man.
bam, we smashed into. And we were on the way to Interscope. We were on the way to the record company for a meeting, and I fucking sideswiped somebody on La Cienega. I had to pull over and do all this fucking paperwork and shit. So, we kind of limp into the meeting, you know, late. And then another time I fucked up a rental car over something that was on the cassette. I don't remember who it was. Like, whoa! And I ran into a pothole and I blew out a tire. And after that, the guy from the record label said, "Hey, we're we're not going to drop you from the label, but you're gonna have to get your own car."
Yeah. This is an untenable situation with the rental car thing. But I think that's the thing that as
Yeah.
musicians that is so damn exciting is that there's things that get you just want to rush home and pick up your guitar and play maybe not that thing or whatever, or it could be a vocal thing that he was saying, but it just inspires us to just want to create and just be
It inspired me to not listen. It inspired me to not listen to music when I'm driving.
yeah, it's
And you can ask my wife Julia. It's like it drives her nuts because when I'm in the car, it's like that scene from Fargo. Total silence. Total fucking silence. See how you like it. Total fucking silence.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's there's certain things I can't listen to. I can't listen to Maiden or Rush or a couple of while driving. I will always go way too fast.
Yeah, like if I listen to Iron Maiden in the house, like I get too wild. I remember one night standing on the dining room table, the Number of the Beast was on, and it got out of control. But that's true, actually, too.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I was really drunk and having a great time, and
to number
got
the
on the dining room table and was rocking out to Number of the Beast.
yeah. One thing that I don't think a lot of folks that listen to you, or maybe don't know a lot of your work, might have one idea of you, but I don't think they can pick up on the Philadelphia soul thing that you're probably is equally influenced by Donny Hathaway as you would be somebody else. It's just there's something that's unless somebody really knows your backstory, I don't know that they would know all of the soul and the Philly thing. And
Yeah, I mean, I was born in Reading, Pennsylvania, which is obviously, you're listening to Philadelphia radio and you're rooting for the Philadelphia Eagles.
yeah,
Um, you know,
congratulations, by the way.
that's what's happening. And when I learned to drive, I would go down to South Street in Philly. Then on a Tuesday night, they'd have like an open jam. And so I can remember going down there playing, sitting in and walking South Street. So, I think you're influenced by your surroundings, and I said this, like before. I know they're not Philadelphia artists, but my first concert was Stevie Wonder.
Yeah,
I saw him in Valley Forge on a round stage that turned. I was really young and impressionable. And then shortly thereafter, we saw George Benson in the same venue with it was great. And that really impacted me. Like Talking Book was a record that I listened to religiously. And George Benson, I love. I mean, he's definitely my favorite guitar player. And I at the same time got into hard rock and like Iron Maiden. That was my first proper rock concert. Loved Black Sabbath back then.
yeah,
And but then I kind of got influenced when I started taking the guitar more seriously. I would get into like Holdsworth
yeah.
and Steve Morse from the Dixie Dregs. I remember when I learned how to play Blood-Sucking Leeches, I thought I was really, really badass.
Oh yeah, yeah. Not an easy riff.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's just interesting. You're right that there is something about the where you grow up, and then also like the climate. Like if you're indoor, like I grew up in Cincinnati and hung out at the skating rink, so funk music and Bootsy Collins and
Oh yeah.
Slave and all that kind of stuff. But the fact that it was so cold a lot of the times drove kids indoors a lot. So
Yeah. Yeah.
listening to Pink Floyd and Rush and Aerosmith and Iron Maiden and but then I'm listening to
Uh,
Parliament Funkadelic and all the other stuff.
yeah, I love P-Funk and Sly and the Family Stone. I mean, Sly was a big influence too. But, something you said triggered a memory. I remember going down, there was a place outside of Philly called Pulsations.
Yeah.
It was a dance club, straight up dance club. I used to go there all the time. And I remember like my friends would kind of stand around and I would be out there dancing with the girls, just partying like on the dance floor, not partying, getting drunk, but just having a great fucking time. And I loved that. I loved being on that dance floor. It was interesting because I was a guitar player. Most of the guitar guys were just kind of, with their legs spread, standing strong, testicles hanging real low. And, I loved to dance and I was into that whole funk thing. Like certain songs would come on, I'd be like, gotta get out there, man. I fucking felt it. I love it.
Yeah.
And I love P-Funk and
Yeah.
Sly and all that stuff. I mean, I really feel that music very deeply.
Yeah.
And it's funny because people think you can really play with me. I don't think I can play with musicians when it comes to my music that don't understand that music.
Yeah.
Like if you listen to my music and you hear a song like Nickel Hustler or Help Me, or Your Entertainer, those songs are coming from that feel. And if you don't have that in your DNA, doesn't matter how many chops you have on whatever instrument, you'll never be able to play that music correctly. It won't work. You can't.
Yeah.
So when you said about P, like that's a thing that
Yeah.
you either feel, it would be like me all of a sudden going to Brazil and trying to play, it just doesn't, it's your culture.
Yeah, there's something about a song like "Gotta Give It Up" by Marvin Gaye, and if I always think that if you can't feel that if it doesn't do something to you, I worry about,
Yeah.
there's something missing in because skating for us was our dancing. We were dancing on skate. I mean, it was a thing, and it just gives you a different pocket than the average rock player. There's something about those grooves that are, Volcano Rupture by Slave or any of the Daz, Brick, BT Express, Brass Construction, all that stuff is so deep and yeah, it's amazing stuff. So it seems like we had a parallel experience on the dance floor of the skating rink,
Yeah. And skating as well. Yeah. I used to roller skate. How old are you?
I'll be 60 in a couple weeks.
All right. Yeah. I'm 55. I figured we were close in age.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much. This was the hour.
Beautiful. Thank you.
It was great.
Right on, brother.
All
Catch
right,
you next time. Thank you.
See you, man. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Guitar Hang Podcast with Richie Kotzen. What an incredible conversation, talking about his creative process, songwriting, and the making of Black Light, White Noise, Smith Kotzen release dropping on March 7th, 2025. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that like button and let us know in the comments what's your favorite Richie Kotzen track or what's your favorite Smith Kotzen track. Make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. We've got amazing guests lined up for the rest of season 7 and beyond, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Follow us on socials and check out past episodes at John's Guitar Lounge. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you next time on the Guitar Hang Podcast.